welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me are two people who love to drink beer with their pinkies out and dance to disco music after long days at the office. It's Megan Hoffmeyer and John Levingood.
I do that on days off too.
So we're talking about the Manitou today, and there's a scene in this movie where Tony Curtis is just blaring disco music. He pours his beer into a fancy glass, and he's just drinking beer with his pinky out and jamming around his apartment.
I gotta tell you, for someone who thinks they're so classy that they're going pinkies up home alone, he's wearing like his white undershirt after he took off his warlock robe. And when he pours that beer, first off, he throws the beer. Yeah. He throws it in the air and then opens it immediately. And then when he pours it with reckless abandon so that his glass is like 4/5 head.
Well, and he has this really fancy, I think it's a wine glass, but, it's a chalice, so he doesn't get a lot of actual beer in there.
Right, it's what you would drink like a Belgian out of.
But when you
like a double.
When you're, like a quad in there, like when when you go to a restaurant, you order one and it's only 10 ounces, but if you get a Pilsner, it's like 30.
Yeah.
That's good, though. So if you're going to be dancing, if you're going to be disco dancing in your house after a long warlocking, you probably want to have a chalice, and you want to fill it about a third full, because while you're swinging, while you're moving, while you're grooving, you don't want to be spilling beer.
Right, and then when it swirls, if it like hits the side of the glass and there's any like splatter, the head will catch the splatter.
So maybe he's done this a lot.
I think he's just trying to set the tone for us. He's a fancy guy.
Yeah, he's a fancy guy who knows what he's doing with this beer.
One of the notes I had about this movie was definitely
I think
happy hour.
He wants us to think he's fancy.
That was happy hour for him.
Hour?
Yeah.
I think he practices. I think he's the type of guy that when he goes to bars, he gets a full drink and then he dances, and everyone marvels at about how he doesn't spill any of the beverage. So he's doing all the moves, like he's doing the shuffle. So when the shuffle comes on, he does the entire shuffle without spilling a drop of Pilsner.
But I maintain that he is less fancy than he wants people to think he's fancy.
We just saw Into the Spider-Verse, and it reminds me of Jake Johnson's Spider-Man walking up to the shed, and the fancy elevator pops up. He goes, "Well, this is pretentious." Yeah. I can picture him having that reaction to Tony Curtis pouring his beer and having happy hour at his house.
Yeah, man. So I want to recreate that scene and just not see if I can not spill any beer.
I mean, you do that like every Friday.
I mean, I did it earlier, but no cameras were on me.
When I first saw this movie years ago, and then just rewatching it for this, it's so funny that you get 5 minutes or so into this movie, and then that happens, and you're just sitting there with this silly smile on your face, like, what kind of movie exactly am I watching today?
When I was reading reviews for this film, a lot of people, not a lot, but the few people who reviewed this, did not really like Tony Curtis's performance. One guy said he wrecked it, because it seemed like he didn't care. And then the rest of the people are being super serious. And, Michael Anara, all these people, Susan Strasberg, they're playing it super serious. And then you have Tony Curtis, pinky dancing.
In all fairness, with the exception of that opening scene when we meet him, he is handed some of the most ridiculous lines in the movie.
My favorite part, one of my favorite lines is when the doctor's talking about, so there's this doctor. And he goes, "Listen, I'm the best, and I have Cadillacs to prove it." And he goes, "It's not." He goes, "It's not a tumor. It's a fetus. It's not a tumor." And then Tony Curtis goes, "On her neck?" He rocked that line. I mean, this is he pulled off a legit on her neck with a straight face. Oh my goodness. So before we get too much further into this movie. We do have a listener question from one of our favorites. Actually, our favorite, John. What do you think? Is Johnny Numb our favorite?
I'd say so. And if he wasn't always, he definitely became it in the last year or so with his long, thoughtful questions.
If someone asked, I wouldn't be disingenuous when I said that he's our question-asking MVP.
I do chat with him a little bit, I don't know what to say, socially, just through Facebook, just randomly every now and then. Like, he's a cool guy.
He shares cat videos all the time, and he supports local cat rescue, so I'm a huge fan of his.
Oh, yeah, I can get behind that.
And Megan, I listened to their Best of Horror for 2018, and Johnny Numb was just saying that Claire Foy he hadn't seen her in The Crown, but he said that she's amazing and she should have been nominated for an Oscar
for Unsane.
For Unsane.
It's really good. It's unsettling. I'm not a huge horror person, but that one, that gets you.
He was throwing props at Claire Foy. They said Claire Mother Effin' Foy. That's the way they should announce her name when she does movies now. It's Claire Mother Effin' Foy. Or just Effin'. One of the two, you know. I don't want to get my PG-13 rating yet. All right, so his question is, what are some of the best, grossest depictions of hideous gross on people or animals in cinema? One catch. You cannot mention any David Cronenberg films. My choice would be the translucent sacs that develop on the Gremlins and Gremlins 2 after they get wet, with the baby gremlins squirming around inside.
That's really cool, too.
Just that description is disgusting.
Yeah, he did a
translucent sacs.
He did a really great job. And then after they get wet with squirming around inside, I saw that. So this just proves he's a great writer, too.
Yeah, because it harkens the visual of a ready-to-hatch frog egg with the tadpole kind of flitting around inside.
Those are beautiful special practical effects in Gremlins.
So as I was reading his question the first time, I didn't even, you just start coming up with ideas as you're reading the question. And the first thing that came to mind for me was from a Cronenberg movie. It was from The Brood. And then one catch, boom, he shoots down my first idea right there. When the woman basically has an external reproductive system, it is so harrowing.
I showed my students the scene in The Fly where Jeff Goldblum pulls off his fingernails.
Oh, it's lovely.
And my students just, they loved it. But I love that movie from the 80s. Still, the effects still look beautiful. So for me, you know where I went immediately? Do y'all want to know?
Sure, let's hear it.
I went to, I don't know if this is cheating or not, but I went to Slither immediately.
Ooh.
And I know there's that woman who eats a lot. She gorges herself, so that's not really a growth. But when you watch, when Michael Rooker slowly starts turning into that creature, I don't really think they're gross on him. I guess they are gross, but he just becomes very gross looking.
Chunky.
It's just gooey and fat and writhy.
Yeah.
And it's just nasty.
And he just has these weird scabs and I mean, the people who did the practical effects on Slither did a fantastic job. And so, I don't know, whenever I just think about gross out type stuff, I immediately think of Michael Rooker from Slither. And then I also thought about the gremlin who became the vegetable gremlin in Gremlins.
Oh, that's right. He had delicious growths.
Yeah.
Those looked like legit farm-grown organics, man. Like,
yeah, if that gremlin fought the mom from the first Gremlins, the mom would have made a nice broth and stew out of that gremlin.
Oh, he would have been done.
Yeah, guys, we'd have eaten that thing. What about y'all? What did you have?
Well, the first thing I thought of, I go to comedy typically, and the first thing that came to mind was Igor in Young Frankenstein. And just how his hump would move. I mean, he's pretty gross looking already because of the makeup, but the hump moving around the whole time, it's just funny, and that's what I think of when I think of a weird growth.
If we're to believe that movie, and you also brought up Robin Hood Men in Tights, with the mole that moves around.
That's pretty fun.
We have to understand these moles. If we're taking these movies seriously, that hump and that mole, they move on these people's faces.
They're sentient.
Yeah, they're sentient. So, I mean, they're not just stationary. I mean, so these are moles and growths that move on people, which has to feel weird.
And then the next place I went was Hot Shots, where her mole
Hot Shots Part 2
kept moving, but it was fake, and she takes it off.
And then she gave it to Topper.
Yeah.
Is that a real mole?
I went down a real weird wormhole on this one.
A worm mole?
Worm mole.
What about you, John?
So I had I found out it's hard to search for this online to come up with ideas.
It is hard. I was Googling all over the place, and they just kept coming up with Cronenberg movies.
Because if you throw up the word growth, you might get things about box office growth, financial growth, other uses of the word growth. If you type in tumor, you're going to get a lot of medical stuff piling in. Even if you try and write horror movies, people will refer to a horror movie that they hate as like a tumor of a blight on the genre or something. So like I just had to like walk over to my DVD racks and browse. And so I came up with actually some categories. Like one of those categories is actually a growth that is a reaction. Remember in The Mist when someone is bitten by one of those giant mist flies and the swelling makes it so, like there's not even like a neck. It's this huge pulsating swelling of a growth, and something similar to that actually happens and a movie called Alien Predators from 1985, which is like a campy B movie, not really classic. And it's the same kind of gross effect. And then there are growths like in Abomination, which is a Canucksploitation movie where this guy's like abdominal tumor turns into this monster, which eventually separates itself from him, but it like attacks people while it's still attached to him. But then I started thinking of things like Basket Case, where the guy's like amorphous twin is attached to his hip and murders people, or like Kawato from Total Recall.
Yeah, I had that on there.
And even though I don't think having two heads should be a growth, when Ash starts growing that head in Army of Darkness.
Yep. Well, the eyeball, that's a very good practical effect.
Right. It's an eye, and then you see him going over a hill, like the silhouette, and you see him trying to punch the silhouette of this head. Get off me, you crazy son of a, so all this weird stuff. Like, there's all sorts, and I feel like we're missing so much that we have seen because this is so hard to research, to rally up ideas in an organized manner. But man, like, I think my favorite was Basket Case with the murderous Siamese amorphous twin. Okay. It's like a head and an arm.
And also, I don't know if no one's ever watched this, but it's called The Last Warrior with Dolph Lundgren. And there's a goat thing there that has these pus bubbles growing on it. And the little pus bubbles, never type in big pus bubble in movie. Something gross is going to come up.
You know what else? What's that Josh Hartnett movie where there's a demon on his back? And whenever they take photos, they can see it.
Josh Hartnett movie with a demon on his back?
Yeah, it was a horror movie, one of those.
Wait, Josh Hartnett or the other Josh from Cruel Intentions?
Maybe.
There's called Shudder.
Oh, Shudder.
Oh, yeah.
Joshua Jackson.
Joshua Jackson, the remake, the American remake of the Japanese or Korean movie, yeah. And he took a picture at the end and he saw she was like on his shoulders and then she broke his neck.
Yeah, it's gross.
And also The Beast Within, that's more of a transformation, but The Beast Within has a really great growth happening when they find out that the kid was the Beast who got transferred. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but that's
from like 80, right?
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure the date, but I just remember the transformation. That thing's gnarly. But I don't know, man. I'm not done talking about those pus bubbles in Last Warrior in the Dolph Lundgren movie. It's a little goat who has pus going all because it's a radiated wasteland, and there's just massive pus bubbles.
Could you stop saying pus?
Yeah, there's massive gross bubbles of white substance on him.
Ew.
And they pop.
And they pop?
Yeah.
Oh, what does that make me? Zombieland, one of the zombies had this bubble that just pops out its nose, remember? Or is that World War Z, one of the zombie movies?
Oh, the big zombie pus? Ugh. I think we should just do a pus podcast.
I don't want to hear that word anymore.
That sounds gross.
Oh, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Johnny Numb. You allowed me to say... I'm not going to do it again. So, this movie, The Manitou, John, do you want to give us a synopsis for it real quick?
Okay. A woman essentially gives birth to an evil 400-year-old Native American dwarf medicine man from a giant tumor on her back.
That's exactly it. IMDb did a good job. They're like, a psychic's girlfriend finds out that a lump on her back is a growing reincarnation of a 400-year-old demonic Native American spirit.
A fake psychic.
Yeah, fake psychic. And this movie was a book originally, and there is a sequel, The Manitou Returns. And
there's 6 books in the series.
Megan went
There's
down
not a movie sequel, though, is there? Is there a movie sequel?
No, there's just it's a series of 6 books.
But the guy who wrote it he's written tons of books. He even wrote sex education books. He wrote a book about 25 years after World War II, some demonic forces are let loose of a tank in France.
Yeah, he's got an Irish mystery series with a female detective that's very popular, apparently.
Yeah, the guy's been writing for a long time, and this was his one adaptation.